Hi everybody and welcome to another piano comparison here on the Merriam Pianos YouTube channel. We have never compared the Casio S3100 to Roland's FP30X, but they're virtually the same price. They are 88-note digital pianos that are kind of focused on portability and delivering a great piano experience. And so why not? Here we are to compare them. We are coming up to the holiday season. I know there's a lot of new young piano players out there where one or both of these might be on a possibilities list. So hopefully this helps. If it's the first time that you are seeing us here on the channel, we'd really appreciate if you hit that subscribe and notification bell, because we'd love to have you back. We're always doing this kind of stuff, and we're here to make your piano shopping and piano ownership journey just a little bit more enjoyable and fun. So without further ado, let's dive right into today's comparison of the FP30X and the PXS3100 right away. So we're going to start on the PXS3100 first. Now, this is a super light, super portable piano. It clocks in just over 25 pounds, very similar to the PXS1100, which is its kind of smaller brother. The whole purpose of this instrument from Casio was to be as light, as small, and as portable as it possibly could. And in that mission, Casio has definitely succeeded. These are super, super easy to just pick up, take with you wherever you want. And on top of that, they're battery operated. And of course, be nice to the environment, make those rechargeable. It'll save your wallet in the long run. All of that being said, this is a very, very easy to transport. Now, this is where it differs from the 1100. The 3100 is geared towards more stage players who are going to be using this in a live gig setting, whereas the 1100 is fairly basic with its onboard features. It's essentially a very, very light acoustic piano or Rhodes replacement, whereas the 3100 is absolutely packed full of 700 sounds and 200 rhythms. So there are so many settings in which this instrument is going to be really a great choice. If you're playing on your own and you're wanting to accompany yourself, if you are in a band and that band is going to expect from you a wide range of sounds and textures that you have to cover, you can call up out of that 700 virtually anything you want, save it to a registration, and even have some assignable knob controls to give it even more dynamicism within that. So two very different purposes. Now we've matched it up with the FP30 because the price point is virtually the same. But as you'll see later in the review, the FP30 is bringing different things to the table that the PXS3100 does not, and vice versa. Let's get right into the sounds on this instrument and let you hear some of those core tones that it's packed with. The Grand Piano Concert, which is what you're going to hear first, is actually, as we've confirmed from Casio, but they don't really put this in writing, is actually the Hamburg sample from their GP310 and 510 series. But with a slightly downgraded DSP and some of the digital audio conversion processes maybe a little bit downgraded. But the core sample is actually that Hamburg Grand. So that's what you're hearing. I'm just going to play it right now. So I really like how dynamic this piano tone is. I mention that because sometimes in this price range you get a very flat kind of piano experience. The sample may be of good quality, and so as a listener sometimes it's a little hard to detect that there's this lack of depth. But what you do get on the 3100 is a pretty broad range of timbre depending on how you play this instrument. And then on that piano sound, you can do a pretty respectable amount of editing within the Casio music space. And you can get in there and there's some resonance options that you can muck with, the kind of the ambience or the reverberation engine in there, as well as there's some spatialization options. And if you're not in the app, you can access those, of course, just through sound mode and edit through the screen. But the app is really a little bit easier to access a lot of those deeper functionality. So we've heard the grand piano sound. Let's hear a few others. So here's a stage piano. A little more punchy if you're going to be playing with like an ensemble and just need something that really cuts through. Rock piano. Not as big a fan of that one. I'd stick with the stage piano if you needed something that was just really bright and crispy. Jazz piano. Again, not sure why they put a chorus on there, but it's there. Now that's nice. Ambient piano. Crazy compression kind of effects going on there. Pop piano. Dance piano. LA piano. Tack piano. Mono piano, honky tonk, and it goes on and on and on. Octave piano, I guess. Strings piano. So there's a really great variety of piano tones that really do have quite a diversity. So that's definitely a plus. You get into your E-pianos. There are 42 E-pianos, or what they're calling E-pianos. I see some bells in there, so maybe not quite E-piano in some people's books. But a good selection there. 42 organ type or reed type instruments. 30 string or orchestral type instruments. 58 pads. And then you get into 500 others. And that's going to include the General MIDI 2 sound bank. So 700 in all, but really of your core sounds, I guess you're really sort of talking about in the 200 range, where Casio's put a little bit more focus, a little bit more depth in those samples. And they're really, really easy to navigate without the use of an app. The categories are easy to call up, and they're all right there. Now the sound is coming to you through two 8-watt speakers, and these speakers got some tweaks when it moved from the 3000 to 3100. I think they changed the coating on the cones and maybe changed kind of the travel distance that cone can move with the magnet. And Casio claims that this has helped sort of with this frequency response and just how clear the speaker is. I've had them side by side, especially with the 1000 to the 1100. And yeah, there's a difference. I mean, we can sort of debate the degree of difference. I guess is going to depend on, people's prior experience and what their expectations were. But there is no doubt that there was a difference, and it was an improvement. And the 3100 has that same speaker box, or that same speaker design. They also have the front tone port, so you do get some nice treble presentation out in front of this instrument. It's got 192 notes worth of polyphony that's driving that. It's still using the Air sound processor. And generally speaking with the speakers, for something that is so light, in terms of just overall loudness, there isn't actually a big difference between the 3100 and the Roland. Now there is a difference, but I don't really think that the overall volume is where that difference is. It's a little bit more kind of the shape of the sound in terms of the EQ that you get out of the two, and then just the bass presence that you get on the Roland is quite a bit more substantial than on the Casio. But I have a feeling that that has as much to do with the speaker boxes and how that's baffled or chambered on the Roland as it does necessarily the power of the speaker itself, because all of these things kind of play together to create a final result. But as it stands, these are 8 watts side in terms of how they're rated, or how Casio is rated them. Now in terms of how to manipulate that sound, this is where kind of the stage piano part of this starts to play in a little bit more, because the 3100 has these two knobs on the end. Now they're kind of quasi-assignable. They're not as fully assignable as, say, what you get on the 6000, which we are going to be covering obviously in a different video, but you can switch between various functionalities that they've got pre-assigned to that, plus you've got the pitch bender. So for example, if we're on clean guitar right now, and if we want to use those knobs to affect the sound, then we would just go down into our control section over here. We would hit the knob, and then we've got the ability to now manage which effects those knobs are going to control. So you've got a filter cutoff and a resonance. Now you've got a brilliance and reverb. And chorus and reverb. And then you've got envelope, vibrato, portamento, layer modify, layer lower. So quite a few, 14 I guess, assigned functions to those knobs that you can go through. for all of the different sounds. So that kind of gives you a bit of a more real-time ability to affect some of those sounds, especially if you're going to be using like a synth or a sound that, you know, people would usually expect some type of affectation or real-time modulation. You've got those, and of course your mod wheel, which is going to do that. So that's where that extra functionality over here comes from that might make it a little better suited or well suited for some basic stage use. We're going to now switch over to the Roland and have a listen and peek what the Roland's offering in comparison in terms of its sound. So, like the Casio, I find the Roland also quite a dynamic tone. Lots of variation between your more subtle, lower dynamic range, and then the tone really brightens up when you get into more of your fortissimo range. One of the things I like about the FP30X over, say, the 30 is that curve into the really most brilliant parts of the tone is a lot better stretched or a lot better managed than on previous versions. So you don't feel like you're hitting this like sample stepping thing happening. It's a nice easy transition between your sort of forte, mezzo forte, timbre. Back down again. On the Roland, you've got the ability to access really your kind of core sounds from the interface on the instrument. But if you want to get into the full General MIDI 2 sound bank, you are going to effectively have to use the app to access those. There's not a great way, especially visually, to really know where you're at navigating that huge number of sounds because the Roland doesn't have a display. And so because of that missing display, the Roland has to keep the functionality on the instrument itself in terms of the user interface a lot more simplified than the Casio can get away with because it's got the display, which increases sort of the complexity of the navigation that they can load onto it. So the number of sounds that you can get to or kind of memorize where they are on the FP30X is a lot smaller. And to the point where I would almost say that for anybody who wants to extract kind of maximum value out of the FP30X, don't even really think about using this without the app. There is so much more that you get out of this once you pair it up with the app, the least of which isn't being able to navigate the huge array of sounds a lot more easy than having to remember what key combination is going to access that sound. So you'd press and hold your category, and then all of the keys starting right from the bottom up is how you would get to the various selections within that category. So if we want to hear the second piano, pressing hold piano, and then there. Which I think is going to be either mellow or ballad piano, if I remember correctly. So that kind of wraps up what they're offering from an acoustic piano or an acoustic piano keyboard instrument, because it all obviously includes some harpsichords in there as well. Just like the Casio, the Roland, you can really get in there and manipulate that piano tone. You can use Piano Designer and get in there under the hood of the sort of supernatural engine and kind of create your own piano tone, which is, I think, one of the biggest, most enjoyable parts of owning a modern digital piano is your ability, in a lot of cases, not in all cases, but certainly in the two that we're talking about here, to modify a piano experience to suit your playing and suit your needs. So in that case, both are great. On the e-piano side, and so you get into your claves, your Rhodes, your Whirlies, and all of that stuff. And so that's a kind of a pretty good sample of the types of sounds you're going to get on there. So not exactly the same as you are getting on the Casio, but reasonably parallel offerings when it comes to those core tones. And then you get into others such as strings. And this, of course, is where this interface starts to fall a little bit short if you're not going to be using it on the phone. Which is, after your piano and your e-piano tones, all of the other, which is like literally hundreds of sounds, you're either having to remember various key combinations or you've got your phone. Now, here's the thing. The phone is an easy thing to set up. The Bluetooth connection is really stable. So is this that big a deal? Not really, but it is something to certainly be aware of. So all of that sound is coming at you with a maximum polyphony of 256. And it's going through these 12-watt speakers, a pair of 12-watt speakers. As I said, in terms of overall loudness, I didn't actually notice that there was that big a difference between Casios and the Rolands, which is interesting. Where I did notice a difference was really kind of the bass presence or the fullness of the sound out of the onboard speakers. One thing that we need to keep in mind is that the overall size and weight of the case on the FP30X is quite a bit larger. And one of the things that allows is a much bigger speaker box, which I think is going to create some more resonance potential within the cabinet itself. And you definitely can hear it down here. So it's a really nice full sound if the idea is going to be that you are doing a rehearsal with just the onboard speakers, or you're just playing for yourself with the onboard speakers without the use of any headphones. You know, maybe something to consider, that there is that sort of lower end presence that you're getting out of the FP30 that you wouldn't be out of the 3100. In terms of being able to affect or change any sound in real time, you've got limited options here on the Roland. You'd either have to get into the settings and be dragging kind of a slider in an app, or you'd have to be trying to make manual adjustments to this on the fly. Neither of which is practical, which means that Roland is really pushing this at people who are going to be using this almost exclusively for piano, e-piano, and maybe some organ stuff in a professional setting. And if we needed any more clues than this, they've only really listed piano, e-piano on there as the category. So no doubt that they've done their research, and they know that the likely buyer for this isn't going to be doing a lot of synth playing, isn't going to be looking for anything more than just that. And of course, Roland has the RD88 that kind of caters a little bit more to that, albeit at a much higher price point than the 3100. Anyway, so that is our discussion on sound between the two of them. We're going to come back and now we're going to compare actions. Thanks so much for being with us. See you in a second. The difference in actions between these two instruments is pretty substantial. On the 3100, we have this smart scaled action, which Casio came out with the original 1000 and 3000. They've updated the weighting slightly on that with the 5000, 6000, 7000. The 3100 still has essentially the original version of this smart scaled action. And for people who are not dyed-in-the-wool acoustic piano players, which are quite a few people who I think would consider themselves keyboard players or piano players, the 3100 provides a weighted experience that is going to be a lot more expressive than, say, a plastic key action in a frame that doesn't weigh much more than that. I think for people who have a lot of acoustic piano playing experience, and maybe even that's what they would consider their primary practice instrument or writing instrument or composing instrument, whatever it is, the 3100 action is going to probably feel a little less at home than the FP30X. That said, there is a weight cost that goes along with that as well. So on the Casio, there's definitely been this conscious decision to create an action which is weighted, but is not going to behave exactly the same as an acoustic piano key in certain situations. And that really comes from the fact that the key is so much shorter. Not the part that you can see, but the pivot length, or the kind of the distance from the front of the key back to that fulcrum where the key is pivoting. And in a regular piano key, that fulcrum is quite a bit further back than where you can stop seeing the key. Which means that the difference in weight, or the difference in pressure you need, from the very front of the key to, a centimeter back or an inch back or whatever it is, isn't really that dramatic. You can feel that it's getting a little bit heavier the further you get in, but it's not like it's doubling or tripling in resistance. On a key this short, you actually do get a situation where as you get further into the key, you have an enormous increase in the resistance, or vice versa. As you get further out, you have a decrease in resistance. If you're playing the keys in sort of the regular zone, which is, I would say about an inch back from the front of the white key and a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch back from the front of the black key, these keys are going to be weighted pretty normally. But if you are playing things which are a little more complex, lots of really dense chords where some of your fingers are going to have to be a lot forward, and you run into that often when you're getting into more advanced classical music, this is going to have some moments that feels a little bit weird. I don't think Casio is even pretending like the 3100 is intended or directed at like a high-end classical piano crowd. To me, this is really focused towards a crowd that wants a weighted experience, wants a really light, easy to truck around instrument with like good professional grade sounds that's just easy to use, low cost, great for rehearsals, great for a pretty wide range of gigging settings. That's where this is geared towards. When we move over to the Roland, we have a PHA4, which I think is definitely coming a lot more from the angle of trying to replace an acoustic piano key, you know, the full experience of it. So the pivot length on this is longer, the weighting on this and the whole dynamic kind of experience of the PHA4 is going to feel a lot more like a small acoustic grand piano than the Casio. The PHA4 action, to me, even has a slightly heavy key when compared to a lot of upright actions. And I know that if you're only used to an upright action, you know, this might actually give you a little bit of a workout. It's a slightly stiffer key. It's very, very close to what you're getting on most like 5'5" grand pianos. The PHA4 is also a very robust key. It's really built to take quite a bit of abuse. It's been on the market longer than the smart scaled action on the 3100. That said, it has been out for a couple of years now, and the failure rates on both of these are extraordinarily low. So it could be that we're actually looking at a very, very similar level of build quality on those two actions. But I've just spent more time playing on the PHA4, and I know how much abuse I give this thing, and it's pretty impressive what it'll stand up to. The surface tops of both of these keys have a nice kind of faux texture to them. So neither one of these is like a glossy white or a glossy black. Gives a nice grip on the hands. The last big difference is on the Roland, you've got a triple sensor and a escapement simulator. Again, I think this is just speaking to the fact that they really are trying for an acoustic crowd, whereas over here we've got a dual sensor. There's no escapement simulation on there because they probably thought, why do we even need to do that? And they'd likely have a point. So just to sum up action, here we've got an action which is going to be feeling slightly on the lighter side of things, and for, I'm going to say 95% of most repertoire and playing settings, a weighting that's going to feel nice and comfortable, particularly if the alternative was either a semi-weighted action or, you know, like a plastic, you know, a tab sort of spring-loaded action. If that's where, you know, a prior buyer is coming from and either upgrading or moving or transitioning to a 3100, this is going to feel really good. This is going to be a lot more at home for somebody who's coming at digital pianos from an acoustic piano paradigm or experience. I'm going to move on to the third section where we're going to talk about some of the other features loaded onto these and give you some final comparisons and conclusions. Thank you again for being with us. See you in a second. Let's talk about auto accompaniment. So on the Casio 3100, and auto accompaniment, by the way, is something Casio knows a lot about. Casio makes some really great arranger keyboards out there. We don't deal much with them here in the piano store because virtually all of them are shorter than 88 keys, and it's you know, a slightly different crowd. But Casio has the experience building great arranger keyboards, and which essentially is the whole function is to provide this band, this semi-autonomous band that one keyboard player can control and still play over. The 3100 has 200 rhythms in it, and it does have a pretty easy to use, for me, a very high quality auto arranger, given the price and the fact that it's also kind of wedged in with this stage piano format. They're easy to access. You can get to them by pressing the function key till you get to your rhythm, and then you've got pops, jazz traditional, Latin, world, world 2, and ballad as your options, and then a very, very easy and straightforward interface where you can select your variations, your synchro start, as well as your ending. You've got your start and stop, your normal fill-in, intro. All that stuff is very, very easy to use, and it's right on board. You don't need the app, and you'd be surprised at the quality of some of these sounds. Now, I know we just did a 3100 review a little while ago, so for some of our subscribers, you'll have already heard this, but for people who are seeing this for the first time, I'm just going to give you a quick sample of what is loaded here on the 3100. Steady jazz. What is steady jazz? Well, let's find out. kind of get the idea. So you can change the mode depending on how you want it to follow your left hand or the full keyboard. And you've got some variations between each one of those samples and like it's each one of those rhythms, and there's 200 of them. Over on the Roland, you can get into the same concept, but the number of rhythms that are available to you is now in the few dozen instead of the few hundred. And you need to be using it with Bluetooth or with a wired connection. And here is a tip. If you are going to use that and you're going to be using the arranger in any sort of a serious function, do the cabled connection. The Bluetooth gives you just the faintest little delay, which means that it's not going to be quite picking up your beat one when you're making chord changes. I've tried it both with the cable and the Bluetooth, and the cable is spot on. There's like no detectable delay whatsoever. You get right onto that next chord, but you need the app, and the number of rhythms is quite a bit less than what you get on the Casio. There's some other really meaningful differences in some other features. Both of these do have Bluetooth audio, meaning you can stream Bluetooth audio to them, not out. Both have Bluetooth MIDI, which gives you those wireless connections to the various apps. But the Roland has USB audio, and USB audio is very, very handy for people who are working with, say, a laptop that doesn't have great speakers. They're doing some writing or they're doing some producing. They're maybe using something like GarageBand or Ableton or Logic or something like that. And you want to make use of the onboard speakers here so that you don't have to be using headphones and you don't have to be using your laptop speakers. Plugging this into the laptop with a USB audio connection basically means that these speakers become your computer speakers, and you've got full two-way flow of digital audio back and forth between this instrument without having to use any audio cables whatsoever. That's really super handy, and it would be great to see every single manufacturer adopt this out there. I really like it as a feature, but it is only applicable to people who are going to be hooking this up probably to a DAW to do some type of music creation. The Casio doesn't really do that at all. Both these instruments have the 1/4 inch stereo outputs, which is great. It means you can use headphones or not, independent of your decision whether to hook this up to a PA or another amp or interface. Both have the option to have a triple pedal system on it, or a single pedal system. And then they all have the same complement of basic features that you could expect on any instrument, such as metronome, the ability to split and layer multiple sounds. They both can do that. Both have onboard recorders. Both have metronomes with quite a few options. You can transpose, you can split, you can layer on both of these. So ultimately, I think this comes down to this. It's going to be action as a priority versus variety of tone as a priority, and possibly usability with or without the app. That really is where these two kind of mark the fork on the road. And I know a lot of people who are going to fall into this camp. I know, like on the wedding scene and the R&B scene, you know, those pop bands, this is a prized possession on here with the sheer number of tones that you can get and just how light it is to set up. On the other hand, I know a lot of jazzers, I know a lot of even like classical people looking for a good practice instrument for dorm rooms. The FP30 has been just such a strong showing for that crowd. Anyway, we hope that you've enjoyed this comparison and that you've enjoyed the channel. And if you have, we'd really invite you to hit that subscribe and notification bell so we can see you back for more. My name is Stu Harrison. Have yourselves a great day.